All right, welcome everybody. Today, I am blessed to have Elisabeth Barna. So, a lot of people know who she is, and I'm just going to walk through some stuff now. There's going to be a lot of accolades here. She's done a lot of stuff, but please give me a moment to give her the proper introduction. So, she's a leading advocate in the trucking and logistics industry. She has over 36 years in her career that she has transformed how the public sees professional truck drivers and the overall trucking industry through national campaigns. Now, at the helm of EAB Strategies, she helps firms shape culture, elevate drivers, and strengthen retention through storytelling. In this episode, she will reflect on the industry's evolution, the power of safety and respect, and how initiatives such as Race Across America reinforce community and partnership. Stay with us for an episode you will not want to miss. So, with that, welcome, Elisabeth. How are you?
I am great, Jerry. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm excited about talking about, the future of trucking with you.
That's awesome. So, full disclosure, as I like to make sure everybody knows, you are a brand ambassador for Konexial. We've had the opportunity to speak a few times and get to know each other. You're working with our team, representing the brand, and you've done a lot in your career here. I mean, you've served as executive vice president of industry affairs and senior advisor to the president and CEO of the ATA, as well as being the COO. You've done a lot of things. Both from a professional career, from a charitable career.
I look back at my career and say, I can't believe I was still in the trucking industry. Um, I moved to Washington, D.C. I was going to stay for a year or two, and I was moving to Boston. I never left. I fell in love with the trucking industry, the people, especially the professional drivers. And I really just loved the whole, every bit of it. Trucking's tough. No, there's no doubt about that. But, looking back on what were some of my biggest highlights, there's a number of them. Every day there was a highlight. You can't go through a day without looking at the positives. But, recently we put two trucks on the White House lawn, and brought professional drivers and CEOs there to meet with the president. That was, pretty cool to see those trucks on the lawn.
So,
Launching Trucking Moves America Forward. That was the first time in decades that the industry came together for a united message, I would say. But really, I think one of the things that for me was just meeting the people and getting to know them and having those like moments where you're stuck at an airport and you see somebody that's in the industry and you share a drink or share a cup of coffee and you get to know them and they become friends. You
that's great.
know, those are the things that really, make my heart full.
That's awesome. So, when you look early on, right, what inspired you to enter, trucking and logistics? You said you moved to Washington, you were on your way to Boston, but what got you to Washington? What got you into it? And what was like some of the early work with the ATA legislative offices? There's a lot of change since you started 36 years
Sure.
ago, but let's go back 36 years. And by the way, just so you know, it does not look like you need to go back 36 years. Tell
Thank
me
you.
36 years, then I believe you. But go ahead
Thank
and
you.
listen a little bit.
I had an internship lined up after college. I went to college in Ohio, Marietta College, and I had an internship with the Grocery Manufacturers of America. So everything that is on the grocery store shelves. And so I came to Washington to do that. They ended up hiring me full time there. And like many consumers, you don't really think about how those products get on the shelves. But behind that is you really start learning about the supply chain and logistics. And so then I had an opportunity, just by chance, honestly, to go to ATA. And I thought, well, that's interesting because I like the logistics and the supply chain. And that's when I really fell in love with how the industry works and the people, and especially the professional drivers. I got to meet some of them and get to learn about what, they do. And there's so many different aspects of being a driver, so many different jobs. And you can deliver in the city or you can go out for a month or 2 months or 3 months at a time. Um, Jerry, I think so many people in different industries say that their industry is a family, but in trucking, and I think you know this and you'll see that we truly are a big family, and I feel that way. So I think that's really what got me into trucking, that kept me into trucking. Um, I started my first years at ATA in the Capitol Hill office. And while I was at the grocery manufacturers, we did a lot of state and federal advocacy work. So we had done a lot of work on Capitol Hill. Um, the first highway bill, iced tea, was happening when I was in the Hill office, and
Wow,
got to see how our members and our lobbyists really worked hard to represent the interests of the overall industry. So when that bill became law, I saw how it affected the industry in a positive light and what strong advocacy was all about.
that's awesome.
And that really made a huge impact on me and wanted me to keep going.
That's awesome.
That was back though when we had fax machines and
Yeah.
pagers.
What people used to call facsimile.
Right.
For those of you that don't know what that is, I apologize, but we're
Yep,
just
exactly.
when you look at public perception, you know, and how trucking has evolved over your career, what would you, how do you look at public perception of trucking? One of the things which is wild is before I started in this space, I used to always talk about how trucking used to be a profession and now it's changed a little bit to a job, you know?
Hmm.
So what do you think? You've seen it for 36 years. You've seen it,
Right.
it's heyday, it's not so heyday, and everything in between. So how do you view it?
You know, the saying, it takes a village.
Mm.
In our case, I think it takes an industry, and it really takes everybody working together to improve the public perception of trucking. You know, I think over the years, every association or every company has a program or has launched a program, whether it's driver of the year or it's focused on safety. It's a tractor trailer going down the highway with a positive image. But the goal is really just to promote a positive image of the industry, but every effort contributes to it. But we launched I guess it's been 12 years ago, the image movement, Trucking Moves America Forward, that I mentioned earlier. And that was a powerful movement. It brought the industry together, which wasn't just an ATA program, it was for the entire industry. But the goal there was to bring in new talent because we were facing a driver shortage, to educate the public about the industry's role, how essential we were in the economy and in everybody's daily life, but also to share the real stories of the people behind the wheel and those people that keep America moving. So we started to see results right away. We did public opinion polling that confirmed that our efforts were making a difference.
Great.
And then the pandemic hit,
Hmm.
and people really got to see what trucking was all about. They saw that, the truck drivers really were frontline heroes.
Yep.
And that shift had a really powerful impact on public perception. So I would say after the pandemic, TMA have continued telling this story. People returned to their jobs, returned to their regular lives. While trucking may not have been front and center, the respect continued. It may have fallen off a little bit because we were forgotten. But in fact, the most recent polling that we did with Public Opinion Strategies was back in 2002. And it showed that the public perception of the trucking industry and the professional driver was at an all-time high.
Awesome.
So 87% of voters reported a favorable impression. 97% believed that the industry played a very important role in keeping the economy moving. And 96% said that truck drivers were essential to the economy. And those numbers may not sound like anything, but when we started back in 2014, only 65% had a favorable view of the industry, and only 23% had a very favorable view. So that's a huge difference, and that shows that storytelling and industry pride can really, really make a big difference.
That's awesome.
And
You
there's
know,
still a lot of work to be done.
I'm sure there is, and just there's always a lot of work to be done. It's never going to stop because it continuously evolves. It's funny because when the pandemic hit, I never really, you pay attention to truck drivers on the road. Obviously, you drive next to them and all that stuff. But a lot of the stuff that you typically hear, It's about accidents, about nuclear verdicts. And one of the things I'll tell you is that there are two things really since 2020 that really kind of hit me when it comes to the trucking space. Number one was the pandemic and the role they played, right? Because you got to get stuff from point A to B to C to D, and make sure that people have stuff, not just the manufacturing side, but the actual
Absolutely.
delivery. And then the other thing is, and that this is a weird one. It's only because I have two young girls, but the Taylor Swift scenario where she gave them all bonuses, right? And
Absolutely.
it's just like, why that hit different? It's because it was a big number. It impacted their lives, right? Not her so much, but their lives.
Absolutely.
Really made you think like, hey, here's a public figure that really appreciated to this point because you never hear about that. I was at a concert in New York the other night and I saw all the trucks, bringing all the stuff in there, but you just walk by them and you just don't think about it, you
You
know?
don't think twice about it.
Oh,
It's like, you go to an NFL game or, even a, you know, um, basketball, any kind of sporting event. You never think that all of that equipment gets there
yeah.
by truck. The hot dogs, the stadium that was built all was brought in by a truck
Yeah, the Taylor
and a
Swift,
driver.
the toilet, both the pandemic, because it really highlighted the supply chain, right? I mean, really, because we had nothing but time on our hands watching
Right.
TV, right? And then the Taylor Swift thing, it's just like, okay, it really my kids never talked about trucks, and then all of a sudden they talk
Right.
truck drivers for a short period of time, but they did.
Well, and I think that, during the pandemic, especially, people were out buying things. They were, e-commerce was so high then because they weren't able to go out and do experiences. And now that they are doing experiences, you're seeing more, you're sort of seeing that truck out there and being like, oh, there they are again. Or hopefully people are seeing that.
I I hope they are. I really.
Right.
So you've done a few things here. You've led Trucking Moves America Forward, America's Road Team, and
Yep.
Women in Motion. What motivated these campaigns, and how did you develop them?
They were all driven by a shared mission, which was to educate the public, the policymakers, business leaders, the media, about the trucking industry and really to tell our story. It's a shared commitment about safety, the strength, and the diversity of our workforce, I would say, too, and the essential role. It all goes back to that, the essential role that trucking plays in the economy and in our everyday lives. But we wanted to tell this story, and the story that's a lot of times overlooked, as you know, like unless there's a pandemic or something like that. Um, and the initiatives were also built to build greater respect for the industry and for the drivers, especially. But to build opportunities for growth, for leadership opportunities, and for long-term sustainability of the industry. So, America's Road Team was actually developed back in 1986 uh, when I think Tom Donahue was running ATA at the time, and they felt like it would be great for a professional driver to talk about what they do on the road. When I came back in 2005, they were only doing a handful of events a year, and I felt like there was an opportunity to really, really amplify that message. And so we just kept going and going and going and built that program, um, you know, 100, 200, 300 events a year and continue to do that today. We added show trucks and we're able to educate kids and the media and folks like that. With Women in Motion, I developed that right before I left and they've really taken off with it. But that was to advocate for more women in the industry and for those in the industry to give them some professional development and let them know that there are additional roles for them in the industry. But to showcase the different career opportunities,
Oh,
there's professional drivers, there's leadership, there's C-suite, that type of thing. And then again with TMAF was, really to build uh, positive public perception and attract new talent.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I know this as a fact because we're doing some of these events with you, but you partner with a lot of state trucking associations to amplify advocacy and messaging around advocacy. Um, and emphasizing people behind the wheel. So, how, why, how's that all that occur, and what are some of the results for that?
Jerry, you will, as you get to know me a little bit more, and I think you know me pretty well now, but there are two parts of this industry that just are in my heart, and it is the professional driver and the state association executive. Two people that work harder than people realize, I think. And so the state trucking associations are gold. They are truly, I think, one of the industry's greatest strengths because not only are they working in the federal level, but they're in every part of the state too. Um, and not every sector is fortunate to have such a dedicated organization like the states. And I think it makes a huge difference. But early on in my time at ATA, we had one of the states want to come in with some of their members and visit their congressional delegation. And I was like, well, this is a great idea. Let's do it with every state. And a lot of associations do that where they do like their Capitol Hill visits or come to Washington and they bring all their members at one time. And so we thought, like, wouldn't it be great to bring them in throughout the year? So I called it the Call on Washington program. And pretty much every week that Congress is in session, a state association and their membership comes to town, and everybody wears those I Heart Truck buttons. So you know trucking's on Capitol Hill. But what's so great about that is these are constituents that are meeting with their members of Congress. A lot of them are relatives of that member or someone in the office, next door neighbors. They went to grade school. And that connection really, I think, makes a huge impact. And so that we have a constant visible presence on the Hill. And that takes a lot for a state exec to do to they do so much, but to bring their members and to make that commitment financially, time-wise, to do that and to advocate for the industry is huge. But in my new role as EAB Strategies, I've been partnering with them with Reach Across America. We made a revenue generating program with them to be able to help them, but also engage with their members and their professional drivers, their local communities, and such with such a powerful cause. We feature them on Reach Across America Radio and their state execs, their members, their drivers. And then also I've been working with some of them on their emerging leader programs, and also with their state road teams, training them on media and presentation skills so they can share their stories, in a better way and a more comfortable way for all of them. So, really anything they want and need, I'm here to help. And I just really enjoy working with them. And their members are, anywhere from two trucks to five or 10, 20,000
They're the
trucks.
heartbeat of America, as I like to talk about,
They really are.
in the
And-
trucking space. And I got to tell you, I mean, you're popular at state trucking associations.
well,
That's
thank
what
you.
Matt and Craig tell me, and that everybody knows you. You've obviously spent a lot of time there, and you have some passion for it. I mean, that's awesome.
Yep, I've been working with them since I started my career.
So you are involved in St. Christopher's Trucker Relief Fund and Truckers Against Trafficking, which we are as well with some trafficking associations that we deal with. How do charitable efforts support your advocacy works?
Helping people has always been part of who I am, and how I was raised. I remember as a little kid delivering Meals on Wheels with my mom, growing up. So service has always been part of who my family is and who I am. Being involved with St. Christopher's I got on their board when I left ATA, so I've been on it now 2.5 years, I think. But I think that's where family comes into play and supporting families of drivers, but supporting the communities we serve. And I think that's really vital. For the advocacy of it is keeping the trucking industry strong.
Yeah.
And, we provide critical resources to drivers when they're out of the truck, either being, due to illness or injury, and being able to keep those families running when they maybe not don't have the financial will to do so. Or on the other hand, providing programs for them to keep them healthy, smoking cessation, getting them off of vaping, cancer prevention, um, weight, keeping them healthy overall. And with TAT, I've been involved with them since their inception, and that is just inspiring to see how the trucking community has really come together. They reached out to us and the state trucking associations right away. And the truck drivers are the eyes and the ears out there. So that's community, that's involvement. And we've been able to take that message to Capitol Hill, to DOT, to the White House, and talk about how important the trucking industry is in saving lives, not only on the highway, but in the children's, saving children's lives. And being able to advocate for that has been, you know, just fabulous. But being able to get the community involved. I mean, so many people believe trafficking is only in, you know, underprivileged areas. It's in every community. It could be your neighbor next door and you just don't know it. It could be in your
Crazy.
family and you
It
don't know.
really is crazy, you know?
Yeah, but being able to see an industry come together, and not just the drivers, but the back office workers come together and get trained and make a difference has been really heartwarming.
So, like us, you're involved in Reach Across
Yeah.
America. I know that, our marketing team and Kristen oversees is a big supporter of it, and we do a lot of good stuff with them. Tell us about your relationship with Reach Across America. Why is it important to you? What have you seen come out of it? Like, tell me about those experiences.
Sure. I started with Reese Across America early on, before it was actually Reese Across America. uh,
What
when
was it?
we were hauling Reese down to Arlington Cemetery, one of our members at the time, Barry Pottle with Pottle's Transportation from Maine, called and said, "Hey, we need an extra truck to take these donated Reese. And I know ATA has a show truck. Can we use it?" And so we got involved that way, and ever since then have been involved. But really, when a photo of wreaths in Arlington National Cemetery with the snow got put on the front page of the Washington Post, it went viral, and people started calling and saying, "What can we do? What can we do?" And so that's how they became more of a charitable organization and came up with the mission of really to remember the fallen, honor those who serve, and teach the next generation the value of freedom. And that really truly says it all. My dad served in the Army, but I was really never, like, we were never really the military family, where we moved around and around. We grew up in Pittsburgh, and we stayed there. So um, I think for me, it's all about the mission. It's all about the community, and it's grassroots at its core. I'm really proud to be an American, and I think it's the mission and the program shows what is possible when people put others first and unite around shared values. Respect, gratitude, and patriotism. And so, I would say back in 1992, when Morrill made the first voyage to Arlington on his own, he had 5,000 wreaths were
Wow,
laid at Arlington. And last year, more than 3 million wreaths were laid in over 4,900 locations across the country. And so far this year, we've surpassed 5,000 locations that will lay wreaths at in 2025. So I think it shows the kind of growth that's really possible through people coming together and through community. Um, there's over 4 million volunteers that believe in this mission. And so the more that we work together, I think is just inspiring. And, you hear stories from the Gold Star family members and from veterans themselves, that what it means to them. And, that tugs at your heart and you just want to do more.
that's awesome. You can tell when you speak about the different, um, charity and advocacy work that you do. You're really passionate about it. Like, you can hear it. And, a lot of people, write checks, and that's awesome too. Don't get me wrong, but like,
Right? You need those.
yeah, you need those, right? But like, the grassroots stuff, telling that story about borrowing the truck, which a lot of people wouldn't know, right?
Right.
And seeing what it's become today is awesome. I didn't know much about it, stupidly, before I came to
No,
Konexial, but I will tell you that, we are big supporters of it here, and I've gotten to know a lot about it, and absolutely support it now. Just like
yeah.
trafficking
I've
work.
ridden in the convoy the last 2 years with a driver, and I think everybody should have that experience.
That's awesome. So let's get the crystal ball out again, and see about some calls to action here. So when you look ahead, 5 to 10 years, tell me what excites you most about what you see as the future of transportation and supply chain. You've had the benefit of seeing it all come,
Sure.
over the last 36 years. So what gets you going? Like what do you see?
I think for me, one of the most exciting things is to see where the future leaders that we've been mentoring, where they take us. You know, they're leading companies now, they're sitting in the C-suite or they're making strategic decisions. And it's amazing to see where they see this, how they view the supply chain, but they're not afraid to take risks. But they're also not afraid to remember the history and to learn from what, the other generations have done leading up to this point. Um, but, we talk a lot about technology. And like I said before, they grew up with technology. So they know how it works, they know what it can do, and they can really think about, outside of the box. And so I think what excites me the most is using these future leaders or these emerging leaders and seeing what the next technology innovation is that they can come up with. And what, you're seeing drones now deliver packages, but what is going to be next and how they're going to improve customer service. How are they going to save money? Is trucking going to become profitable, like more than a couple cents on a dollar? Um, are they going to be able to enhance the driver experience? I know there's a lot of talk that we're not going to need professional drivers. My belief is you will always need a professional truck driver, and I hope I'm right on that. So, but that's really what excites me. I mean, platforms like you guys, I mean, what you've done, you weren't around 5 years ago, 10 years ago. We didn't have those capabilities. So to see what that even looks like, I think is really exciting. What
Yeah,
trucks are going to look like.
yeah, I get it. Yes, the trucks are changing. It's
Oh,
crazy. Is it such a deviation or a difference between where you go? Like I was in Europe 2 3 weeks ago. When you're driving on the roads there, you have very flat faced trucks, right? And not in America here. I mean, you have
right,
those. You think about the Mack trucks. You think about that big front, and it's just it's crazy to see. Hey, maybe there'll be some standardization over the course of time,
right.
right? You just never know.
The
So
more chrome and the bigger the engine and the, bigger the truck, the better.
I, I'm with you. A couple more questions here.
Sure.
When the people listening to this and the people that know you and the people that follow you, when you think about today's world, 2025 and 2026 and 2027, what would you tell them? What call to action would you give them to kind of inspire change in the space? Whether it's supply chain, logistics, transportation, what would you want to see?
I would say get involved. Stay informed. The rules, regulations, everything changes that affects our industry. It constantly evolves. And so if you don't get involved, you're going to get left behind again. I like to say that, like you have to be engaged. Advocate for the matters, uh, advocate for what matters to your company or to the industry. Reach out to your policymakers, whether that's at the local, state, or federal level. Invite them to see your operation firsthand. If you're a trucking company, shipping company, trucking, get them up into your truck with a driver, let them go for a ride along. Um, or manufacturer, have them come and see what you make. Technology provider, let them see your technology. But encourage your team to get involved in the associations or um, networking events or industry events. I mean, that's where the innovation is happening and you can see it. You can test it. You go to the trade shows, learn from other people and see what they're doing. If you just stay within your company, you're missing out on a lot. And that's what makes our industry tick is really by working together. We're all competitors, yes, but we also are all going to work together to help, that move the industry forward. And you can only do that by um, advocating together and getting to know each other and solving problems together.
Well said. So when you look at the EAB strategies and what you've done as far as starting that and marketing your services, what advice would you give to transportation companies, fleet leaders, who are aiming to kind of future-proof their business? I mean, future-proof is a hard word, right? You know,
Yep.
things evolve and change. Anything constant in life is change, right? Um, death too, but we don't want to talk about that. But what advice would you give? You've seen a lot, 36 years, you're
Sure.
consulting many businesses, as a business owner in today's world. So what would you tell them?
I mean, there's a few things, but investment is one of them. Don't be afraid to invest in your company, specifically your people, technology, equipment. So invest in your people. I mean, that's your biggest asset. Every role, from whether it's dispatch to security to your accounting team, they play a part in moving freight, but without your technicians or your drivers, the trucks don't roll. I always like to say that there's, every wheel has a cog in it. Um, and, don't just invest in the competitive pay or the benefits, but, the work-life balance. And we talked about that before, what you can do to retain or to recruit drivers. But work, development programs too for your office staff. Maybe even business courses for owner operators that you may have. Um, Listen to your drivers and technicians. They're the ones using the equipment. Give them equipment that's not going to break down and invest in that equipment. Um, and that's the foundation. And so once that's built, then embrace the technology. Like I've said before, if you don't, you're going to be left behind. And then I think you'll agree with me. Don't just collect the data, use it. Turn it into action.
Thank you
Um,
so much.
yes,
Because everybody thinks like that data and those pretty dashboards are amazing,
it's
but if they don't turn into actions to drive results, none of this
great.
stuff matters.
And so people get the data, they say, we're going to use it, but you also have to train your people on how to use it because they may not know how to use it and they may be afraid to say, like, I don't even know what to do with this data. So encourage them to, and then once they do know how to use it, encourage them to ask their provider, what else can we do? What else can you do for this? Or what else can we do with this data points? Or we've got these challenges. Can you guys come up with a solution for us? Um, I think with a strong culture, a committed team, and just keep thinking towards the future and making a good place to work, you're gonna do well. But you have to just keep thinking forward, and investing. It takes money, but if you don't, it's gonna take a lot more money,
I agree with you.
not to.
A lot of people, I couldn't agree more. Where a lot of people are so focused on today, and I get how important today is. Like we got to get to tomorrow, but like we got to put the eyes on tomorrow as well.
There are times where I think you need the today team, and then you need another separate team that knows what's going on today, but is really just looking for the future. And that's the strategic, development team.
Yeah. So let's end with this question here, and I always like to ask it to people because I'd like to, I think it's a fun question. There are a lot of people who know you. There are a lot of people who don't know you. But even the people that know you, what is something about Elizabeth Barna that people really don't know, or you don't let people know? Like, give us a little secret about you that most people would not know about you.
Personally,
Yeah.
my biggest bucket list is jumping out of an airplane. I'm a big risk taker with
You
height.
can have that. Me and heights, we don't get along.
Yep, big
Yeah,
risk taker on the height thing.
really.
Oh gosh, yeah. I've gone up, 36 stories with drivers before, on those games where they drop you and you just sort of fly like a soar with an eagle. So
Well,
absolutely.
just so you know, I agree with you about the Eagle stuff. But you
Well,
said you said you were in Pittsburgh for a
yeah,
long
I'm a big
time.
born and bred Steeler fan there, Jerry. So
I got to tell you,
that's the only thing we won't get along on.
two Super Bowls in the last 8 years. Put
I know.
a
I
lot of
did
dust
root
on those six. A lot of dust on those six from the other side of the state.
I did root for y'all this year. I mean, I figured the Commonwealth needed a winner, so
Well, you've gotten two of us in the last 8 years, so
I know.
Yeah, I want to thank you, Elizabeth. I mean, your vision for elevating drivers, and you could see really the passion that you have for the drivers and the industry partnerships is really powerful. For our listeners, thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it and leave us a rating. And we'll be back in a few weeks with another conversation, about cutting edge of technology, leadership, and transportation. Until then, keep asking the right questions and drive change. Elizabeth, thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Oh, thanks so much. I had a great time. It's always fun to talk trucking.